Firefighter Stuart Chavez trudged back to camp, his boots kicking up ash as he moved through the scorched terrain. His uniform was streaked with dirt, and his lungs burned from hours of breathing smoke. It had been a grueling day battling the raging wildfires that were tearing through Northern California. Though Chavez was no stranger to exhaustion, tonight felt different. As the dark evening settled, an eerie quiet replaced the chaotic roar of flames. But something about the stillness unsettled him. Then he saw it. At first, he thought it was a shadow playing tricks on his weary eyes. A figure, a man dressed in black, was walking away from the camp. Chavez blinked and rubbed his eyes, but the figure didn't vanish. Instinctively, he quickened his pace, intent on introducing himself. Yet, before he could close the distance, the man disappeared into the dense trees. When Chavez reached the spot where the figure had entered the forest, he found no trail, only unbroken shrubs and undergrowth. Unease crept into his chest. Who was that? And why would anyone wander off into the wilderness when wildfires were spreading so unpredictably? Shaking his head, Chavez turned back toward camp. Whatever the explanation, he'd need rest to face another day of firefighting. But as he approached the camp, his unease deepened. A plume of white smoke rose above the tents, and the sharp scent of charcoal and lighter fluid mingled with the acrid smell of burning wood. Chavez's heart quickened. Was it an accidental fire, or worse, arson? He broke into a run, weaving between tents and vehicles. The camp was their sanctuary, a rare place for firefighters to rest and regroup. If it burned, their operations would be in jeopardy. As he neared the source of the smoke, Chavez's mind raced. Could the stranger he'd seen have set this fire? When he arrived at the clearing, he stopped short, utterly baffled. A crowd of evacuees and firefighters had gathered, their faces lit with astonishment and curiosity. In the middle of it all stood Guy Fieri, the celebrity chef, clad in his signature spiked blonde hair and a black apron. Instead of chaos, the air was filled with the rich, smoky aroma of barbecue. "It's Guy Fieri," a woman whispered, clutching her dog tightly. Chavez blinked, trying to process the scene. Guy was standing in front of a massive grill, flipping racks of smoked pork belly. Nearby, his assistant, the same man Chavez had seen earlier, was dumping ashes from the grill into a safe pit. Realization dawned. This wasn't an accident or arson. This was an act of kindness. Chavez stepped closer, still bewildered. He'd heard that Guy Fieri had evacuated his restaurant due to the wildfires. What was he doing here, in the middle of the devastation? "I heard what you guys are going through," Guy said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "I couldn't just sit back and do nothing, so I thought I'd bring a little comfort food your way." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. For the first time in days, smiles broke through the exhaustion etched on everyone's faces. Chavez felt a wave of relief and admiration. He'd been ready to confront a potential arsonist, but instead, he'd found a man who had gone out of his way to lift their spirits. Guy's barbecue station quickly became the heart of the camp. He served up plates of his famous pulled pork, ribs, and smoked chicken, alongside hearty sides like mac and cheese and coleslaw. Firefighters, evacuees, and volunteers gathered around, savoring the warm meals and the rare sense of normalcy. The next day, Chavez learned more about Guy's efforts. The celebrity chef had been coordinating with local officials and organizations like Operation BBQ Relief to bring meals to those affected by the wildfires. Operation BBQ Relief, founded by competitive pitmasters Stan Hayes and Jeff Stith, specialized in providing hot, comforting meals to disaster survivors. Since its inception, the organization had served millions of meals across the country, and now they had partnered with Guy to tackle the devastation in California. But Guy wasn't just there to cook. He brought his team, his equipment, and his characteristic enthusiasm. For hours on end, he worked the grills, interacted with evacuees, and posed for photos with firefighters and law enforcement. His presence became a beacon of hope amid the despair. "I can't fight fires," Guy admitted to one firefighter, "but I can fight hunger, and I'll keep cooking as long as you guys keep fighting." As word spread about Guy's efforts, more volunteers joined the cause. People who had lost their homes to the fires showed up to help serve meals. Firefighters who had been working 24-hour shifts found solace in the camaraderie and the comfort food. Even local law enforcement and National Guard members pitched in, swapping their gear for aprons. Thanksgiving approached, and Guy came up with another idea. Knowing that thousands of people would be spending the holiday away from their homes, he decided to bring Thanksgiving to them. Teaming up with Chef Jose Andres in his World Central Kitchen, Guy organized a massive feast. Together, they set up tents and smokers, preparing to serve thousands of Thanksgiving dinners. On Thanksgiving morning, Guy tweeted a photo of his team prepping turkeys at 5 a.m. "We're going for 7,000 pounds of turkey on 6 smokers," he wrote. By the time the meals were ready, over 800 volunteers had joined the effort. Firefighters, evacuees, and community members lined up for plates piled high with turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, and pie. Chavez was among those who helped serve. As he handed out plates, he couldn't help but marvel at the sight before him. People who had lost everything were smiling, laughing, and sharing stories. For a few hours, the weight of the disaster lifted, replaced by a sense of unity and gratitude. One moment in particular stayed with Chavez. A teacher from Paradise, one of the hardest-hit towns, approached him with tears in her eyes. "I'm alive," she said. "My students are alive, and today I believe in hope again." Guy's efforts didn't end there. In the weeks that followed, he continued to support the firefighters and evacuees, coordinating with Operation BBQ Relief to provide tens of thousands of meals. For Guy, it wasn't just about food. It was about showing people that they weren't alone. Stan Hayes, the founder of Operation BBQ Relief, understood the power of a hot meal better than most. He'd started the organization after a tornado devastated Joplin, Missouri in 2011. Back then, he'd thought his team of pitmasters would only stay for a few days, but they ended up serving 120,000 meals over 11 days. Since then, Operation BBQ Relief had responded to over 40 disasters across 24 states. "Barbecue is comfort food," Stan said. "It reminds people of good times with friends and family, and it gives them hope for those good times again." For Chavez, the experience was transformative. He'd joined the firefighting effort to save lives, but he'd never expected to witness such an outpouring of kindness and humanity. Guy's barbecue didn't just fill their stomachs, it reignited their spirits. As the fires slowly came under control and the camp began to wind down, Chavez reflected on the lessons he'd learned. Disasters had a way of bringing out both the worst and the best in people. And in the midst of devastation, people like Guy Fieri reminded him why they fought so hard. In a world that often seemed divided, the wildfires had sparked something extraordinary. A community united by resilience, compassion, and the simple joy of sharing a meal.